Following is a summary of Episode 9 of the A&E series on the Revolution, a 45-minute video entitled Hornet's Nest. At its conclusion, there is a brief summation of John Gordon's South Carolina and the American Revolution, a battlefield history. Episode 9 of the A&E Revolution series, Hornet's Nest, opens in May 1780. It was the fourth year of the war. The war in the North was typified by deadlock, but in the South it took on a different nature. The British had captured Charlestown and with it the only Continental Army in the Southern states. Believing most Americans in the South to be loyal to the Crown, the British now anticipated the complete conquest of the Southern colonies and reestablishment of British authority in the region. Lieutenant Colonel Banastre Tarleton was sent into the back country of South Carolina, where he overran a colonial regiment under Colonel Buford at the Waxhaws. Here, after brief exchanges of musketry, the colonials began surrendering. Tarleton and his men gave no quarter and cut many down in what became known as the Waxhaw Massacre. Tarleton received only a reprimand for the incident and continued his campaign through the backcountry as before. The American patriots, in turn, used the event as fuel for propaganda, portraying the British as marauding occupiers. The battle set the tone for the war to follow, and the population became divided. The British then compounded their mistake by issuing a proclamation that demanded allegiance from all backcountry people. Many who had been neutral to the struggle, or content to watch it pass them by, were now polarized and forced to pick sides. The British were in effect creating an insurgency. Roughly equal numbers of loyalists and patriots now prepared to fight one another in what the video terms a hornet's nest. War had stirred up old animosities, and issues of loyalty were not as cut and dry as the British believed. Leaders rose up, not just to resist the British, but also to pillage, settle old scores, or as reactionaries to events. A long and bloody civil war erupted in South Carolina as brutality begot brutality and violence escalated. With the Patriots possessing greater support and a relative home field advantage, it became increasingly dangerous for a loyalist to reveal himself in the backcountry. In response to such a maelstrom of conflict, the British decided to switch strategies. They began to seek out and destroy the elements of Southern Continental forces that remained or were being newly formed up. General Washington responded by sending reinforcements and, against his will, General Horatio Gates. The Patriot militia joined up with Gates and his regulars, and the stage was set for confrontation. On 16 August 1780, 3,000 Americans under Gates and 5,000 British and Loyalists under Cornwallis formed their lines against one another. The American force of militia and regulars had never trained or fought together before, and what was worse, Gates positioned his inexperienced militia regiments to secure his left flank. The British, like ancient armies of the past, placed their greatest strength on their right. Therefore, the best regiments of their army, under Tarleton, were facing the least dependable and most inexperienced part of Gates's army. When the British right commenced a bayonet charge, panic took hold, and the Patriot lines collapsed. The militia melted away into the backcountry, and General Gates fled to Hillsborough, North Carolina, and would later face court-martial. Things now looked bleak for the Americans in the South. But in the weeks and months to follow, the situation would stabilize as the colonial army regrouped. This time under the leadership of Washington's favorite subordinate, Nathanael Greene. Greene would also be reinforced with the respected Daniel Morgan. But conditions were grim as Greene was forced to supply his army locally, and his request for reinforcements and supplies to the Continental Congress seemed to be in vain. Seeking to reduce his enemy's greater combat power and lengthen his supply trains while improving his own, Greene divided his army with Morgan and went on the move. General Cornwallis obliged him and divided his army with Tarleton. The chase was on as four separate armies made their way across South Carolina in two opposite directions. When Tarleton, in the west, finally caught up with Morgan, Morgan was ready for him. The resulting Battle of Cowpens established Daniel Morgan, who was already a legend in the eyes of his soldiers, as a great strategist, successful leader of men, and a hero of the Revolution. He was the first commander to effectively employ his militia units. With a deceptive feint that was well carried out by the militia, who favored hit-and-run tactics anyway, Greene lured Tarleton into a trap. After firing 2 volleys, the militia withdrew from the field. The British, believing it was Camden all over again, pursued directly into well-established formations of American regulars, who were waiting for them. Like Camden, a rout did ensue, but this time it was the British who fled. At this point, the A&E video Hornet's Nest concludes, saving the remainder of the Southern campaign for the 10th video in the Revolution series. For a more detailed understanding of the Southern campaign of the American Revolution, consult John W. Gordon's South Carolina and the American Revolution, A Battlefield History. This book right here. This work begins with a unique introduction that defines the nature of battle of the period and clearly explains military terminology such as his definitions of strategic, operational, and tactical. He also expounds on military methodology and the characteristics of the weapons employed. His informative rundown of key terms found in the text proves helpful as he thoroughly covers South Carolina's military involvement in the Revolution, from the war's beginnings to its end. He chronologically covers every notable battle that occurred in South Carolina, of which there were many, as well as a few outside the state, such as the Battle of Guilford Courthouse. I found the unique aspects of the Battle of Sullivan's Island particularly interesting. The fact that the Americans only had 28 rounds for their cannons at the start of the battle, and that the British vessels' normally devastating broadsides were completely mitigated by the simple construction of the American fort, in particular the mounds of sand and spongy palmetto logs that absorbed the cannonballs' impact. I also found it interesting how Clinton and Cornwallis didn't just simply abandon attacking the American fortifications and moved overland and captured Charlestown direct. In conclusion, Gordon shows clearly how British Loyalist defeat in South Carolina led to their ultimate defeat in the South and in the war. It is also interesting how he shows the fighting bringing the low country elite and backcountry planters together to form the ruling class that would dominate South Carolina for many years. This work is a most thorough guide to an understanding of the military aspects of the Southern campaign, especially the fighting in South Carolina and its crucial role in determining the future of the war. Thank you.